personally, the way I describe this is that I came out of the shadows and into the spotlight. And it was a real 180 flip, because when you're in the Ministry of Defense, you can just about tell people that you're in the MOD, but in conversations with people not there, you just have to be very general and say, oh, it's just an admin job, nothing exciting, things like that. You can never get into the details, of course. So much of it is classified, particularly on things like counterterrorism, and which I have been fortunate enough to be involved with in one of my MOD postings. So yeah, you have this kind of contrast that for 21 years I was this smartly dressed civil servant who couldn't really discuss anything about their work. And then I felt, when I was exposed to this UAP information, I felt that it was too interesting and important to walk away from. And I felt that the ministry corporately was not really gripping this. And I knew that there was more that should be done. And so I stayed involved, even while I was in the Ministry of Defense and somebody else had that job. I stayed involved. The Ministry of Defense then, under open government initiatives, started declassifying and releasing some information. And that, even though my non-disclosure agreement and the Official Secrets Act applies, enabled me to speak about this. And I wrote some books, and I did some TV, mainly news. So, for example, the BBC, if they wanted somebody to talk about this subject, they would come to me.
You were the UFO correspondent, essentially.
Yes.
Yeah.
And ironically, I actually did some of the first interviews I did, of course, was between 91 and 94 when I was doing that job. I was put up as spokesperson.
Yeah.
But once you're on a BBC list, you never really get off it. And with the agreement of the press office, they were happy for me to carry on doing that, as long as I did them the occasional favor.
I see. I see. Very interesting.
But so I carried on, and then I took early retirement in 2006 because I felt that I was doing two jobs. And since then, I obviously, when I stopped doing government work, it freed up a whole lot of time, and I was able to ramp up what I did privately. And then it just so happened, because that's my life journey, that I got married, and Elizabeth is a US citizen. So I moved to the US in January 2012. That put me right in the center of the crosshairs when it came to folks like A&E, History Channel, doing shows like Ancient Aliens, and suddenly thinking, well, hey, we've got this government guy who's done this not as a hobby, but as a job. We should get him on the show.
Yeah, that's an incredible thing to have on your resume as someone, in and around ufology. We're often, our own researchers, and we're, we don't readily have access other than FOIA requests to a lot of these official cases. So it does make for an interesting, it does make it very interesting when someone comes into this space having prior knowledge to how these things function within, the confines of the government. So I agree. Like, for me, even sitting across from you now is, a treat, because someone who's interested in this stuff, you were the type of person I would like to ask the most questions to. So I can see how that was very fitting. Was there ever obviously there probably was, but was there ever like a conflict of interest there, going from, like, did you ever get a call from MOD being like, hey, Nick, what are you doing?
No, but only because I knew where the line was. And I mentioned earlier that I did them the occasional favor. And I knew what lines they wanted to push in relation to this, and I was happy to do that. And one interesting indication of this happened, a few years ago, with the whole Let's Storm Area 51 thing. And I did an interview on Fox News, and I said, let's not storm Area 51. It's a really bad idea for a whole bunch of reasons. And subsequently, I got an email from my old boss at the MOD, who I thought had long since retired. Turned out he was still at the MOD, 43 years on or something. And he said, saw your interview, Nick, good line. And so it just reinforced the fact that they're always watching.
Whoa.
So no, I haven't had conflicts because I know where the line is and I don't cross it. And
because of these sort of favors. What is one of these favors, would you say, that you're comfortable talking about? What's something that they would ask you to do or say or not say?
I think one of the favors is to promote the line that we believe in open government on this, and that information is being released.
And that isn't necessarily the case, is it?
It's not always the case.
All right. Okay. Fair enough. But that's what they want us to believe.
Yes, it's what you would call in public affairs language. You would say it's a key message that they want to promote. Always promote open government. We are quite open with this, even if we're not.
Right, and that definitely counteracts what is kind of happening right now with the U.S. government because the government, the general consensus of the population believes that the government is withholding sensitive information that could pertain to their welfare, well-being. That is why. That is why the current administration was so favorably, put into office. And that is also why this UAP and sort of not just the UAP, sorry, but the whole declassification task force has now being put forward because of this lack of transparency. So
yes,
it is in a government's interest to at least promote the idea that they are being transparent, even if that isn't the case, to avoid things like we're seeing now.
Yes, and on the very first day of President Trump's second term, he signed an executive order that related to the declassification of information about the assassinations of JFK, RFK, and MLK.
Yeah,
and this is kind of a little complex in legislative terms, but the newly formed task force on the declassification of federal secrets, which has been headed up by Representative Anna Paulina Luna, is associated with that executive order. It derives some of its authority from that, but it's not specifically mentioned in it. But the letters that this task force sent out to the various government agencies cite the original executive order. So you could say that this is really a top-down initiative. And those letters specifically mentioned UAP as being part of the business of this task force. They're going to do JFK first. They're going to do some other things, but UAP is definitely on the list.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, that in parallel with that, we know that, of course, there is information that the government isn't telling on this. One of the reasons we know it is because that there are public hearings, but there are also classified briefings. And sometimes journalists will buttonhole someone as they come out of one of these and stick a microphone in their face and say, hey, what just happened? And they'll say, well, it's very interesting, but it's classified, so I can't tell you. Occasionally, people's language and sometimes body language kind of makes you wonder. I think one congressional representative said, yeah, I've just had the classified briefing, lock your doors. And you get these kind of, and another said, I can't discuss what happened in the classified briefing because it's classified. But if you were to ask me whether or not I think we're alone in the universe, then my answer would be that I'm not. And of course, that question had not been asked, though it was perhaps implicit. And we know that, of course, the UAP task force, now, of course, it's Arrow, the All-Domain Anomaly Resolution Office, had at least one meeting, maybe more now. They testified under oath that they had set up a Five Eyes UAP caucus or working group. So we know that not only is the United States involved, but Canada is involved, the United Kingdom is involved, Australia is involved, and New Zealand are involved.
Mm-hmm.
But I think all of the Five Eyes nations have confirmed that they sent people to this UAP working group meeting in the Pentagon. I think the first one was held May 23, if I remember correctly. But of course, the details of what was actually discussed have not been made public.
Yeah.